It's a very interesting place, South Walton County. If folks haven't been there, it's in Northwest Florida. It's between Fort Walton Beach / Destin and Panama City. It's experienced a lot of rapid growth, and a lot of that is in the coastal regions of the county, fueled by a lot of high-end seasonal housing, recreational activities, and tourist-oriented amenities. A lot of you are planners, I'm sure, so you're probably familiar with Seaside, which was one of the first neo-traditional developments around. And, so it's one of many communities along the beach that each have kind of their own unique attributes and designs. So there's a strong desire to maintain what we call a human scale along the 30A corridor, which is really a critical corridor because it's what connects each of these beach communities together. The idea is to discourage high-speed through traffic and focus on options like pedestrians, bicycles, autonomous shuttles, future transit, as well as potentially micro-mobility in the future. So in 2019, Walton County selected a team led by New Urban Concepts to develop a mobility plan and impact fee. My firm is a sub-consultant to them. My role has been to lead the analysis of travel demand and travel patterns within Walton County. And StreetLight Data has been a key to doing that. With planned implementation mobility fees to fund the mobility plan, we also need to look at vehicle miles traveled and future demographics, future travel demand, and this comes from the regional travel model. So the core challenge is there's a real seasonal nature of travel in South Walton County. A lot of the travel is being done by what you consider temporary or seasonal or transient residents that are only there for vacation. StreetLight Insight provides a great means to quantify variations in seasonal travel. We set up a series of zones representing the various communities along this area. We were able to identify the months of the year that comprise peak tourist season, estimate the proportion of trip generation of each of these areas, understand some of the trip distribution patterns from different zones to other zones, estimate average trip lengths, and then rank the communities in terms of trip activity as well. We use this information in a number of ways, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. Now that we actually have a draft plan, some of this analysis is going to move into looking at identifying the impact of COVID-19 on travel patterns within Walton County, something I've done with StreetLight Data in other communities. So what are some of the findings from this? Well, the peak months of travel do vary somewhat by zone in Walton County. June and July are consistently peak months of activity for all zones in the southern part of the county. August was not ranked in the top 5 months, though. This reflects that school start dates are somewhat earlier in the Southeast US than they are in other parts of the country. Instead, we found that March, being the spring break month, and October, when they have fall festivals, were actually more commonly in the top 5 months. And again, the top 5 months varied from community to community, but July and June were the two consistencies. So we have 4 different mobility fee assessment areas, and these are depicted in the map you see there. And one way that we were able to cross-check a couple of sources, we looked at the model and what the estimates of VMT were by planning district. These correlated pretty well with the amount of trip activity that StreetLight Data was showing us within each of these 4 areas. So out of the top 25 streetlight zones based on trip activity, 6 of these were pass-through zones. For those of you who don't understand what a pass-through zone is, if you're looking at a study area and you want to know how many people are coming into and out of that study area from other locations, you designate pass-through zones. And so there's 2 on I-10, 2 on US 98, 2 on State Road 20. these all rank at the top of the list in terms of trip activity. The top zone for trip activity overall is the north end of the county, and part of this is because the zones are much larger up there than they are in other areas. And that's something you're going to find. If it's a bigger zone, there is the chance that it will have more trip activity. The third ranked zone is in the south central area, just north of the bay. But 14 of the remaining 17 zones ranking at the top are in the South Walton County area, which is shown in the map that you see here. Even though you have a few exceptions to that with the pass-through zones and the one zone up north and the one in the middle of the county, the southern part of the county really does dominate the trip activity. So a draft mobility plan and mobility fee was published in March. We actually had the first reading at a public hearing on Tuesday, which I was at. The draft plan reflects connectivity needs of different communities based on the StreetLight analysis and forecasts of trips and VMT from the model. The focus is on multimodal improvements and what we call a 20-minute neighborhood. You see examples of those with these circles on the aerial on this sheet. Mobility hubs have also been identified based on trip interaction among the communities from the StreetLight data. So we looked at the StreetLight data and where are trips commonly coming from and going to that are within a bicycle, pedestrian walk length. And so a series of mobility hubs have been identified based on that. The fees themselves will reflect growth in VMT from the travel demand model.